Good morning, friends. Hello. Well, I need your help doing something very important this morning, so if I can have everyone's attention. I have something really important I need to ask everyone to do this morning. And I know you're eating, but if you could just take a moment. I would like you to take one of your hands, give yourself a great big pat on the back. Go ahead, just do it. Give yourself a nice big pat on the back. Can't hear me in the back? Give yourself a great big pat on the back. And why are you doing that? Well, we all need to congratulate ourselves for getting through the past 3 years, being back together here, together. You did it, we all did it. Pat on the back one more time, good. Congratulate yourself. It hasn't been easy. Hasn't been an easy 3 years. There are still many challenges ahead of us, but lots of reasons to be optimistic as well, and we'll talk about some of those today. So, pat on the back, thank you. And then take a moment to appreciate each other who's here today. Take a look around. This is quite a great group. You look great. Take a moment, do that. We represent 4 very special communities. You represent 4 very special communities, a really wide, diverse array of businesses. And that's significant because I think in the old days, chambers used to just be, he's a banker, he's a realtor, he's a lawyer, and that was all it was. And we like bankers, lawyers, and realtors, but they want to meet other people too. And today we have a really nice, wide variety of people in this room. Nonprofits, big companies, small companies. And if you're not currently working for one of these companies, there are lots of people looking for you, so because everybody's hiring, so do that. And let me thank you all for belonging to our chamber. I'm very grateful for that. Truly appreciate it. At a time when the scope and focus of our work and your work is more important and impactful than ever, we're deeply grateful that you are writing a check for us to be a member, belong to us, support us, are present in our events, sponsor us. Really grateful for that. My name is Greg Reedman. I'm president of the Charles River Regional Chamber, and I want to welcome you to our spring business breakfast. It's really great to be here. Doesn't the Sheridan look great? I haven't been here in a few years. They did a lot of work throughout the building. It's nice to see that, and we're appreciative of the Sheridan staff. And again, you all look great. It's just so nice to see people. So. Thank you for that. Every week, I spend a lot of time interacting with City of Newton officials, elected leaders, people who work in City Hall, Town of Needham officials, people who work in Town Hall, City of Watertown officials and people who work in City Hall, Wellesley officials and people who work in Town Hall. Many of them are here today. And what's fun about this is because for the most part, I mostly see these folks on Zoom or talk to them separately, but they're all here together today. And I know Mayor Fuller is here. She's out in a meeting at the moment, but City Council President Susan Albright is with us. Needham Board Select Chair Marion Cooley is here. Watertown City Councilor Vince Piccarelli is with us this morning, and we've got the Wellesley Select Board members, Ann-Mara Lanza and Colette Frank, plus a whole bunch of other folks. So what I'd like to ask is, if you're an elected official with any of our 4 communities, if you could please stand, or if you work for the municipality in our 4 communities, if you could please stand, just so we can thank you and appreciate it. We're also, Lieutenant Governor will be here, Senator Cindy Cream and Representative Kay Kahn will be with us this morning. And I did want to say thank you to our friend Amy Frigoletti from the town of Wellesley, who is leaving after doing some amazing work there, helping revitalize downtown there. Amy's moving on to Franklin. It's their gain and our loss, but Amy, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Thank you to our sponsors, the people who make it possible for us to have this event today and throughout the year. Cambridge Trust is our breakfast sponsor. Great to have you guys with us in the front row this morning. Really appreciate the partnership. It's been a lot of fun working with you. In-Source Services, Beth Israel Deaconess Needham, the Essence Susel team, and the Mass Health Connector, also sponsors of our event today. And as always, my appreciation to the Village Bank and Needham Bank for their large annual partnership and support every year. Much appreciated. So let's have a round of applause for the sponsors, please. And finally, the chair of our board, John Rufo, is here, and the rest of my board of directors are here. If everyone who's in the board of directors for the chamber could stand, or any of our former directors, and we have many former directors in the room too, if you could stand so we could just acknowledge you as well. And none of that is possible without the volunteers who've helped us, and the committee members and everyone else, and the amazing, unparalleled chamber team that supports us every day. So thank you for them, to all of them. So we have a couple of interesting things set for you today. And what I'd like to do is call attention to that book that you have on your desk, which is the Business Leaders of Color book, which we released officially a couple weeks ago, but this is the first time we're distributing it to a large audience. And our first speaker today is going to tell you more about that project. Colette Phillips consistently appears on virtually every list of the most influential people in Boston every day. She's dedicated her life to helping all of us navigate the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our lives and in our workplace. She does this through many different hats. She has a PR marketing firm. She does this through her networking business, Get Connected. She does this through the GK Fund, which invests in companies owned by people of color. She does this each and every day by speaking out persuasively and forcefully, and we're grateful for that. This spring, we partnered with Colette and her team on the creation of our second most influential business leaders of color list. We had more than 200 nominations. We selected 50 business leaders of color and 20 emerging leaders. And please do take a copy of that booklet home with you to your office. Next time you need someone for your board of directors, need to know someone who knows someone. Don't say you can't find any candidates or people of color to serve on your nonprofit boards or to be part of it. Everybody on that list knows other people that can help you be connected and stay connected, so please take care of that. We wanted to do the list for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to spotlight the individuals of color who contribute to the economic and cultural vitality of our communities. We also wanted to send a message that our communities are not as homogenous as we sometimes are perceived to be. But we also wanted to spark a conversation about where we fall short, and I think we often fall short, and ask ourselves, especially 3 years after the death of George Floyd, if we've lost some of the momentum. So there's no person better who can help us rethink about that momentum than my friend Colette. Colette, please join us on stage.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, you guys could do better than that. Good morning, everyone. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. It's nice to be here with all of you, and I would like to give a shout out to our... You can't, can you hear me now? Okay. I would like to give a shout out to Greg and his team, who have really embraced the aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion as one of its core, not just values, but one of its foundational priorities for this chamber. And I came to Greg, I think 4 years ago, Greg, in December. This was pre-COVID, pre-George Floyd, to talk about how I might work with the chamber to bring this idea of spotlighting, amplifying, elevating, and documenting the contributions that people of color who work for companies in this area are doing. And he immediately embraced the idea, and he said, you must have had my office or my boardroom bugged, because DE&I was one of the priorities that we were going to undertake in 2020. And I want to say that the pandemic and the racial awakening from George Floyd's murder did not actually stop this from happening. We did our first list during the pandemic, and we actually celebrated virtually. So not even a pandemic would stop Greg Riebman. So Greg, I applaud you. I wanted to say that we, for this year, we had over 200 nominees. And I felt that, look at this room, it's beautiful, 300 plus individuals. And I know that within each of your companies, you have people of color who work for you. And I thought we might have been able to get more nominations, but maybe the third list will be the charm. Here is why this is important, and we are at an inflection point in this country where, and I am not talking about wherever you sit politically, this is not what I am talking about. I am talking about the fact that there is what I call a toxic ideology that says that diversity, equity, and inclusion, there is something wrong with it. It's referred to as wokeness. Well, let me give you my definition of being woke. Being woke, to be woke is to be enlightened, informed, educated, and understanding. It means embracing people as human beings. Thank you. Regardless of who they love, what their religion is, what their sexual identity is. This is what we want more of. And I want to see business leaders and corporate leaders and small business leaders really understand that diversity, equity, and inclusion is not about being politically correct. It's about being economically smart. The reality is, if we are going to compete in a global economy, we need everybody at the table. We need to ramp up productivity. We need to ramp up innovation. I don't have to do this because I don't have to tell you this as a woman and a person of color. All you have to do is read McKinsey's report, Harvard Business School, that demonstrates and shows that companies that are culturally diverse outperform their competitors 33%. Now, if there's anybody whose company in this room could not benefit from 33% increase in profitability, please raise your hand. Okay, I didn't see any hands go up. So that really is, it's not only morally right, but it's economically smart. And I want to share with you 3 things that corporations can do to really embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'll tell you, my new hero is Bob Iger at Disney. For those who he decided he was not going to allow politics and a toxic ideology to bully him into dismissing his LGBTQIA employees and refuse to back down. And that's what I call courage, bravery. That's what we need today. With all due respect to our elected officials, they can't do it alone. As a matter of fact, some of the craziness that are being advanced in this country are being advanced by people in politics, elected officials, shameful as that is. And I want to say to you, do this for your employees and do it for your customers. I can tell you, your female employees, your employees of color, your LGBTQ IA employees, your Jewish employees, your Muslim employees don't feel safe. They don't feel safe because they don't know when someone who has some crazy idea might decide to get an AK-15 and show up and decide to wipe out as many people who look like them, who worship like them. And that's where we are today. And I want to see our leaders take the torch and really stand up for your employees. Because at the end of the day, Sir Richard Branson, who is the CEO and founder of Virgin Airlines, said his greatest asset is not his customers, it's his employees. He said, treat them well, they'll treat the customers well, and the customers will keep coming back. So let me just give you my 3 S's for CEOs and corporate leaders and small business owners. Smart leaders, smart, savvy, sharp. Smart leaders recognize DE&I is profitable. And while there's a clear moral reason to support inclusion, really the importance of doing this is the economics of it. It's bad business to not support and stand with your employees and your customers, despite the fact that many people criticize Colin Kaepernick for standing up for racial justice, and they criticize Nike for making him their spokesperson. Nike's profitability went up 10% once they had Colin Kaepernick. There were people who went after a cereal company because of the fact Kellogg partnered with GLAAD, the Lesbian and Gay Alliance Against Discrimination. And I can tell you, as a Kellogg customer and consumer, Kellogg is doing very well. Thank you very much. Savvy executives understand that DE&I creates more productive employees. When employees are happy, it drives innovation and it drives profitability. So it's about the employees again. And companies, with their complicated, despite sometimes complicated history and past history, when they embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, they see the results in their employees and in their bottom line. The third is sharp CEOs see how DE&I taps into new markets. There are people that I shop at or became a customer of because they embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we are increasing. Immigrants, women, people of color are increasingly becoming the people that we are going to have to depend on to succeed in the mid and latter part of the 21st century. And it makes sense. This is not about looking at the deficit. There is no deficit to DE&I. There are only benefits. If somebody tells you there is a deficit, it is because that person is benefiting from exclusion. So I want to say to all of you, be brave, be savvy, be sharp, and embrace DE&I. Stand up for your employees, stand up for your customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Colette, for your partnership and your inspiration really every day. The Chamber is committed to continuing this conversation, not just doing the list and forgetting about it. We have a program next on Wednesday at noon, a virtual program where we're going to have 4 of the honorees on our list talk about some of these issues, and I hope you can join us for that one. So next Wednesday at noon, virtually, we'll make sure you all get a copy of that, but register for that now. All right, I have big breaking news. The GOAT is in the house. The GOAT is here. No, not Tom Brady. I'm talking about the greatest small business owner of all time, our friend Joe Prestejohn. Am I right? Am I right? So, and by the way, can somebody tell me what street we're on today? Someone know? Cabot Street, yes. We are here today on Cabot Street to honor our friend Joe Prestejohn. There isn't a business that's more iconic or more well-loved than Cabot's Ice Cream and Restaurant. Joe's been the proprietor of that for more than 50 years, a family business. For generations, it's a place where memories were made, birthdays, graduations, Little League, dance recitals, wins, losses, first dates, last dates, reunions, countless other milestones, good times, and sad times, always better over a visit to Cabot's. And over the decade, there hasn't been anybody who's more generous, gentle, or a small, humble, small business owner than our friend Joe. He's given thousands of kids his first job, probably some folks in this room, and their kids after that. He's scooped thousands of gallons of ice cream, free ice cream, at community events. He's always been there for our first responders, for our veterans, for so many other groups. He's donated money to many nonprofits. And he's just really been there for us in so many times, good times and happy times. And it's our honor, Joe, to recognize you and honor you today. So how do you do something like that, right? So I wanted to invite up someone from the neighborhood who appreciates what Joe and Cabot's means to our community to help honor them. And I thought about it for about 60 seconds. And I thought of a guy who's a Cabot's neighbor. He can walk there from his house, who has a household full of ice cream eaters, including a 2-week-old, brand new 2-week-old, maybe not eating ice cream yet, but soon. He's also a former Newton City Councilor, and he knows well what Joe and Cabot's has meant to the community and the village he represented. And now he just happens to be a U.S. Congressman, so what the heck, right? So I want to invite up Jake Auchincloss. I did ask him before we get to the part where we're going to honor and recognize Joe to spend a few minutes talking about what's happening in his day job. And as you know, the Senate did agree to lift the debt ceiling, and that's as good a news as we could have this morning. Doesn't mean that there weren't huge detrimental effects to the business community for that whole delay and the shenanigans we went through. But I've asked Congressman to spend 10 minutes or so talking about what's happening in his day job, and then we will also get a chance to hear his thoughts about our friend Joe Prestejohn and hear from Joe as well. So, Congressman.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Greg, for organizing this and for inviting me. I'm honored to be here with the Lieutenant Governor, with the Mayor, with Senator Cream, with Representative Kahn, with owners of the Charles River Regional Chamber, so many friends here in the audience, and of course with Joe Prestejohn. And before we are inspired by the story of Joe and Cabot's, I do want to give you an update on Congress. And spoiler alert, it's going to be less inspirational. But as Greg said, this week the House and Senate did vote to raise the debt limit and trim spending. The center held. Between both parties and in both chambers, there formed a coalition that put governance before purity tests. And as your voice and vote on Capitol Hill, I was an early and forceful member of that coalition, because I believe that you expect and deserve responsibility from Washington. The president did a good job of negotiating. The generational investments of the last 2 years in infrastructure, manufacturing, healthcare, climate action are all protected. Extreme GOP demands like cutting 200,000 Head Start slots for young kids or weakening Medicaid were prevented. In the long tradition of political pluralism, it's a compromise that no one really likes very much, but it's tolerable. What's not tolerable is the brinkmanship that got us here. The full faith and credit of the United States government did not need to be held hostage, rattling retirement accounts and embarrassing the United States on the world stage. There is a regular appropriations process. We're going to kick it off right now, and the Speaker would have had the leverage he needed to drive a very similar deal, but he chose not to. Congress cannot be one constant game of chicken. Divided government or not, there's just too much work that we have to get done. And I know many of you, for example, are struggling with the high costs of healthcare. I'm moving bipartisan legislation to lower drug prices by taking on pharmacy benefit managers, the middlemen of drug pricing, and their insurance company owners who are self-dealing instead of acting in your and your employees' best financial and medical interests. I know also that business owners and homeowners are concerned about and would benefit from more cheaper and reliable energy, especially here in Massachusetts, where we are more exposed than almost any other state to European energy shocks because of our importation of liquefied natural gas. Offshore wind can provide that cheap and reliable energy to the Bay State, along with a lot of good jobs. To advance this potential new energy cluster, I've secured 2 big tax and regulation wins, and I'm grateful for the far-sighted leadership of the Healy administration and of Lieutenant Governor Healy in their concerted efforts to now get turbines in the water and to make Massachusetts the national leader in offshore wind. And while trying to help create one industry, I'm working to hold another one to account. I'll soon be introducing some of the strongest legislation to date, enforcing social media giants to protect children's mental health and cognitive development, and to prevent defamation and disinformation through AI-driven deepfakes. Our kids are hurting, our democracy is fraying, and it's time for Congress to make these trillion-dollar companies behave responsibly. There's a lot more work to discuss, ensuring victory for Ukraine, which I think is going to be the defining strategic imperative of the Biden presidency, and the competition with China, which is going to fixate many presidencies to come. But I think we've had enough politics for a Friday morning, so let's talk about ice cream. Joe Prestejohn's parents bought Cabot's in 1969 when he was 11 years old, and he's been working there ever since, offering thousands of kids their first job, donating endless gallons and hours to community events, and giving both his time and his money to nonprofits like the Boys and Girls Club and the Carroll Center for the Blind. Cabot's is a local treasure. I've been going for 30 years, and in the last 3 years, I've been going quite a lot. I have 3 kids under 3, which means my wife has been pregnant more than half the time since 2019. And that means I buy a lot of ice cream. And when I go, Joe is always working, the restaurant is always full, and the atmosphere always feels like home. Cabot's crystallizes so much of what we all love about Newton. And Joe represents the very best of what it means to be a small business owner. The hard work, the high standards, giving back, and building something bigger than oneself that can outlast you. Joe, please come on stage and be recognized for your exceptional career and service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, everyone. It's been great to be back together again, all together in one room. It's been a rough few years for everyone. I've always considered us very fortunate to operate a family business in such a great community filled with kind and caring people. Thank you, Greg, for all the Chamber has done and continue to do for us all. The Chamber has proven how it brings us all together with all of its great resources and great events. My favorite, spring season, which I hear might be back next year. During COVID, the Chamber formed a collaborative of restaurants so we could talk weekly and share our problems, solutions, and resources. Thank you to Jay Spencer from French Press Cafe for your leadership and your commitment of time to this. When I decided to look for someone to take over Cabot's, it was not an easy decision. This has been my entire life since I've been 11 years old. so 54 years. I have never worked for anyone, I've never had a job, and I was lucky to be able to work alongside my parents, sister, wife, nephews, daughters, and son-in-law. My girls grew up coming into Cabot's to visit me, and now my little granddaughters do the same, which made it a more difficult decision. Another hard thing was telling my staff. They truly are an extension of my family. I owe such gratitude to them. I wanted someone that would honor the legacy of Cabot's and continue to support the local community as I have. I believe that Kay and Kevin Masterson from Johnny's are the right people to do this. Kay often says to people she considers herself the caretaker of Cabot's. And when I hear that, I always smile. Owning a business, there are so many decisions to make all the time. Sometimes it may not be the best financially for the business, but it is the right thing to do for the community or the group that's asking. So thankfully, I've never had a board of directors to answer to or to ask for permission. I just did it. Kind of like Nike, just do it. So to me, it was always a privilege. I've enjoyed being able to create ice cream smiles whenever I possibly could in support of a group. I have seen firsthand through the work that I do and many others do how generous the people that surround this community are. Through the support that we receive at the Newton Boys and Girls Club, Athletes Unlimited, the Carroll Center, and the Second Step. So a big thank you to all of you and all that you do. And especially the Village Bank. Their steadfast commitment to our community is unbelievable. So thank you, Village Bank. So thank you, everybody, and remember, it's never too early to ice cream, so we might be having some ice cream for dessert. I'm not sure. And by the way, I'll always have my scoop, so I am not going anywhere.
Thank you to the goat, and Joe has arranged for us all to have ice cream this morning. So, and as I understand it, true to nature, he scooped it himself. He got his team together, and they've been scooping for ice cream for 300. So, okay, friends, if I could have your attention, please. Thank you, Joe, for the ice cream this morning. Some of you remember that a while back we had in this room, Jim Cook, the founder of Sam Adams, spoke to us one morning, and Jim brought beer for everybody. And Joe said to me, you know, you had Jim Cook bring beer, I got to bring ice cream. So thank you for that. Nice treat and a good opportunity. Pour a little coffee over that for an affogato, right? I wanted to, first of all, thank and acknowledge our Lieutenant Governor for joining us this morning. One of the great things about Kim Driscoll is we've known her for many years as a fierce champion of housing. Back in her days as mayor, we worked together and talked about those things many times, and we're really grateful that she's here today. I wanted to invite, on behalf of all our sponsors, Steve Mead, who is the Chief Commercial Banking Officer at Cambridge Trust, to come up to the podium. On behalf of all the sponsors and Cambridge Trust, we're grateful for that. And Steve, we'd love to have you come up and introduce the Lieutenant Governor.
Morning, all. Can you hear me in the back? Yep. Again, Steve Mead, Chief Commercial Banking Officer of Cambridge Trust. It's my pleasure to welcome you all this morning. Congratulations to Joe on such an accomplishment lifetime. It's great to see everybody in person, community leaders, business owners, and not on a computer screen. Thank you to the Charles River Regional Chamber for getting us all together this morning. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll, today's keynote speaker. Kim is the 73rd Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts. She was sworn in January, joining Governor Moore Healey in a historic series of firsts for the Commonwealth. Governor Healey is the first woman, an openly LGBTQ person, elected governor of Massachusetts. Together, Healy and Driscoll are the first women-led executive leadership of Massachusetts. Before that, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll was the City of Salem's first woman mayor, in a position that she held for 16 years. She has also served as the City of Chelsea's chief legal counsel and deputy city manager. Please join me in welcoming our Lieutenant Governor Driscoll.
Thank you, Steve, and good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Do we have ice cream every Friday in this chamber? Joe, what a treasure you are. I always think when somebody begins to start a small business, you and your family, you have this idea, this concept, and it comes from a place of wanting to serve the community. Yes, of course, you've got to make some money to do it, but if you have that, I want to help my community ethos to what you're doing, I guess you get to stay in business for 40 years and serve ice cream. So congratulations, you truly are the GOAT, and great to be here with you today. And to Greg and the team at the Chamber, it's really terrific to be with you, to see such a packed house, along with so many elected officials. Congressman Auchincloss, who just left, I said to him, wow, you look like you're getting some sleep for a guy who has 3 kids under the age of 3 and works in Washington, D.C. To Mayor Fuller, my always colleague, great to be with you. Senator Cream, Rep. Con, terrific to have such strong legislative leadership in this region doing the work that's important. And I know we have a number of elected officials here as well. Needham Select Board Chair Cooley, and I believe we also have Council President Albright here from Newton, and members of other smaller local offices. I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. I always see the world through the lens of a local official doing that important work on the ground, and grateful to be in partnership with you. And apologies if I've missed anyone, because it's hard to see everyone today. It's a great turnout for a wonderful community of leaders. And again, just want to offer my congratulations to Joe. How special you are to the community, and certainly to this chamber. And Colette, always good to be sitting next to you, leading influential business leaders of color in this region. I caught a tail end of what you were talking about, but we know each other. I know the work you do is important, and you're committed to it, and so are we. You know, I'm really grateful to be with all of you, because I know how important it is to have thriving, vibrant communities, and our business community plays such a large role in that, helping our economy, investing in our communities, and providing opportunities for people to work. I thought today I would share a little bit about some of the efforts we have underway in our administration. We're now just still early on. I think this is the 2nd day of our 6th month, and also leave some ample time for questions, because for me, being able to get out of the State House and hear from folks on the ground, both what the opportunities are, what the challenges are, is really, really helpful. I always felt like you had an edge when you were mayor, because there was no hiding, right? No matter where you were, you could hear about issues on the ground, and get a pulse of what's happening in your community. So I like to use all of you to make sure we understand what's happening in this region, areas we can be helpful. And I want to thank you. The Massachusetts business community, is really strong and really broad. We lead through innovation and creativity, through investment and growth, through employee engagement and advancement. And most importantly to me, so many of our businesses are part of that community spirit and local impact that's vital to the success of communities. And certainly as a former mayor, I've seen firsthand how our businesses help bring main streets to life. I know and appreciate the value of new growth. Look, as a local leader, and I just want to say, for me, local government is one of the most important branches of government. And if you think about it, it's the branch you rely on most in your daily lives. Educating your kids, keeping your neighborhood safe, investing in those places you make memories or add to the quality of life of the place that you live, and helping drive a strong local economy. A lot of that happens locally. And it can't happen without a strong partnership with the business community. Because when we make investments, we're not only providing for that vibrancy in that workforce, we're providing the needed revenues to help support the schools and help keep our parks clean and ensure that we have a strong public safety workforce. The fact is, government can't do the things we want to do and need to do for people unless we have strong growth, an environment where businesses can flourish, frankly, where everyone can flourish. That's why Governor Healy and I are really focused on making Massachusetts the most competitive, the most affordable, and the most equitable state we can possibly be. And just a moment of gratitude, I'm really grateful to be with you in this role as Lieutenant Governor, but even more so because I'm teamed up with a great partner. Maura Healey was a rock star Attorney General, and she's really leading a strong team of officials within the State House, developing a terrific cabinet and ensuring that we're getting out of the way and letting people do the sort of work that we know is important. And I wouldn't be here without a lot of support from people in this room and many others, and I think both the governor and myself have a lot of gratitude that we're in these roles. We also know that comes with responsibility to steward the resources, the power of convening, the policy examples, and put those forward in a way that's leading to a higher quality of life, that's ensuring that we are competitive, affordable, and equitable. And honestly, we've got some challenges in that regard. You know, we have a strong economy, but we don't think it's just going to happen because of Massachusetts' exceptionalism. We're a great state to live. We have lots to celebrate. We are optimistic about our future. But we do need to focus on the things that we know we need to and can do better, especially coming out of this pandemic. It feels very much to me like we're still in a bit of a messy transition phase. We're not sure how remote work is going to work going forward. How do we still deliver high-quality healthcare, knowing that we've got a lot of healthcare shortages and challenges? What's the next innovation going to happen in education? Again, tied to workforce and coming out of a pandemic when so many of our young adults, more than we've ever had, are feeling lost. Higher anxiety, higher bouts of depression. The numbers coming out of the CDC tell some stories that we have to pay attention to when it comes to this generation, the next generation of people who will be sitting in these seats and leading our community. It's important for us to be able to embrace what we're going to do next and to not stand still. There are other states, they want our playbook. The governor and a team of elected officials and cabinet officials were in Washington for something called USA Select, where countries around the world come together with states and look at harnessing economic activity. And our economic development secretary took a picture of a booth, and it said, you know, best public education, best schools in America, highest number of college graduates in terms of the population of the state, life science leader. And I thought, wow, that's our booth. It looks great. It was New Jersey. And I say that because people are getting our playbook. They know the things that we're doing that have worked well here for decades, and they're trying to copy it. North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, places that certainly might have different values. They are in strong growth positions. They have land. And one of the key areas that we know we have to work on if we want to stay competitive is not resting on those laurels and focusing on the areas where we have some challenges and can do better. One of them that I want to talk about today is housing. Because housing and the housing crisis, I've pledged to not leave any group that I'm speaking to and not mention housing and how critical it is that we address the housing crisis that we're experiencing. Right now, we have a 200,000 housing unit gap in Massachusetts. We've built less housing in the last decade than we built in the 2 decades before that, and we are paying the price for it. It's basic supply and demand. We have a lot of demand and not a lot of supply. Part of that is because we make it harder to build housing. The land's expensive. We have a long regulatory, 351 cities and towns, 351 different zoning ordinances, and barriers to housing. We know that the cost of labor's up. The supplies and equipment are up. The interest rates are up. There's a lot against us when it comes to trying to build more housing, especially the type of housing we need. A lot of workforce housing. I'm the mayor and live in, I was the mayor, I should say, and live in a gateway city, Salem. We're the city that used to be affordable. We need people to be able to pour coffee and pour beer in a city that's the 3rd most visited destination in Massachusetts and relies on hospitality and tourism. Salem is now unaffordable to so many people. And it's not just happening in places like the greater Boston area. 50% of renters in the Commonwealth are paying more than 30% of their income towards their housing costs. Think about that. That leaves a lot less money for ice cream, for groceries, for electricity. We're a Commonwealth that is one of the highest housing cost states, one of the highest childcare cost states. It's causing people to think about, do I want to live here? Can I live here? Can I afford to live here? We have a whole lot of young adults who graduated from college last month and this month. Massachusetts is known for having exceptionally well-regarded higher ed institutions. They're graduating, and they might be the first generation to do worse than their parents in our state if we don't figure out housing. They've got debt coming out of college. They're entering into a housing market where both rents and ownership, even for people who are making a lot of money, is really, really difficult. I ask people often, could you afford to buy the house you live in right now if you bought your house 40 years ago? A lot of people answer that question no. And that's great for your retirement plan and your 401k planning. It's not great for the young adults that we want to keep in our state. It's not great for the people we rely on every single day, inextricably linked to us. Somebody you drop your kids off to in the morning, or might be helping take care of your older adult. Somebody who's stocking the shelves in the places that you shop. They need to live here too. And it's one of the reasons we're focused on housing. One of our first acts was the formation of a separate cabinet. We've named it the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And that is, yeah, thank you in the back. Appreciate that. We're focused on making sure we're accelerating the pace of housing in Massachusetts, and especially the type of housing we need in our communities. And the importance of having one cabinet that is focused on bringing housing innovation, partnering with our communities, making sure they have the tools, keeping track of the type of housing we're building. We're 200,000 housing units short. We build close to 20,000 units a year, many, many years, much less. Like, we can't take 10 years to catch up. That's why this focus that we're going to be putting on housing is important to us. And why it's important to you, I hope, is because it's key to our workforce competitiveness. Folks go where they can work. And now that you can work from anywhere in many jobs, we want to keep those folks here, not because they have to, but because they want to be here, because they know they can have that high quality of life that so many of us have enjoyed in this state. Key to that is going to be making sure we have the type of housing we need on the ground, and we need everybody in this fight. State doesn't build housing. Frankly, cities don't build housing. We need to work with our housing developers, both for-profit and nonprofit, reduce those barriers, get comfortable with density. Our vibrant communities, the most vibrant communities in the world, have housing in them and people in them, and ideas that you can have ice cream shops and services close by. It's interwoven with our transit needs and our climate needs, but we can't wait to tackle climate and transportation and build the housing later. It's got to come now, and we need everyone in this fight, local officials, housing developers, and most importantly, our business community. I know in Salem, our aha moment was looking at our data, understanding what our own housing gaps were, who we weren't serving well. The good news is we're all living longer. Hooray! The bad news is we don't have enough housing to meet the need, or the type of housing we need often enough in our communities. So I know that this chamber has been so actively engaged in this issue, and I want to applaud you for that, because it is not easy. I've got the scars on my back from taking on housing in our community, historic places. And I just want to put a nod to the city of Newton for the work they're doing on our MBTA Communities Act. Zoning is an imperfect tool. You know, in 1960s, generally right around that timeline, cities and towns started adopting zoning. Most of the most sought-after neighborhoods in my city in Salem, and I'll bet right here in Newton, were probably built before zoning even existed. And today, you could not rebuild those same neighborhoods because of zoning. It's a barrier. We need to work on tackling that in a way that educates people on the ground and recognizes we can keep the character of what makes us special and also have housing in our community to meet the needs of people who are living here. So I beat the housing issue to death, I know, but I want you to know how critical it is, and we're going to stay on it. I want to talk briefly about two other things, because I want to make sure we have time for questions. One is workforce. You know, no matter where the governor and I, the number one issue that people talk to us about is housing. Like, even in places where housing is more affordable, it's not more affordable to the people who were there. The second issue we hear a lot from are just workforce needs. Coming out of this pandemic, we've got really low unemployment rates, which is fantastic. But what we're seeing is a worker shortage that's not allowing us to have that full economic recovery that we need as we come out of a post-pandemic world. One of the areas we want to focus on is making our workforce programs. We have many of them, but frankly, they're a little splintered and hard to find, whether you're somebody seeking employment or somebody seeking a higher employment opportunity, economic mobility, or if you're an employer seeking workers. The new budget that we've proposed includes funding for 1,000 new apprenticeship programs, making them easy to attend to, and also in the fields that we know have the highest worker shortages. We've put forward a program to make community colleges free, something called Mass Reconnect, for anyone over the age of 25. We've got 700,000 residents in Massachusetts who have some form of credentialing. They started college, but life got in the way and they stopped. We know if we can connect those folks with opportunities for licensure programs, credentialed programs, get them trained in a field where we have needs, and reducing the barriers for them to get there, we're not only going to help them from an economic mobility perspective, we're going to help meet our workforce needs. So we have a big conference coming up called BIO in Massachusetts, tied to our life sciences industry. You're going to be hearing shortly about life science workforce needs and programs that we have moving forward. This is a space where other states, frankly, are eating our lunch. Places like North Carolina have statewide workforce training programs, and as much as we're doing all the R&D, and we love that, we love having all of our big brains working on these life-saving virus vaccines, we also want to have those products manufactured in Massachusetts and really lengthen our lead in that space. Key to that is going to be workforce, whether it's life sciences, advanced manufacturing, some of the emerging technologies. We have an opportunity, whether it's through offshore wind or clean tech, to really be a leader in making it easier for us to deliver clean power in Massachusetts, which is good for us as a state that has high electricity costs, but we need to have the jobs. Reskilling of electricians, folks who might be doing gas and pipeline work who can move over to heat pump work. There's a lot of initiatives coming up to make it easier to attend to these important jobs and make sure we're helping our thriving economy and having our employers have enough people to do the work that they have contracts for. That's key in our mind to making sure we continue having a strong economy locally. And the last piece of this three-legged stool is childcare. You know, the pandemic did a number on meeting our childcare needs. It was tough before. I say that as a mom of three myself, that, you know, dropped that second mortgage payment for early childcare, and thankfully we could afford to do it, but it's hard. Now you're lucky if you can find a spot. That is hurting our working families, especially women, in terms of getting into the career, getting back into a career or getting into a career. We also know it hurts our youngest learners. I mean, the research is clear. High quality early ed makes a big difference in the outcomes of our youngest residents. So in our new budget, we focused on, and thank you to the legislature who's been working on this for a number of years as well, focused on ways that we can grow the pipeline for our early childhood education programs. We really want to be in a position to have free, high-quality pre-K for all 4-year-olds in this state, particularly in our gateway cities. There are other states that do that. We need to do that too. No one decided from up above that public school needs to start at 5. Why can't it start at 4? And there are lots of states who are looking at that. With a declining population and birth rate, we actually have the space in a lot of our schools to do that. Why this is important? Because we know that it will help those youngest learners, as I mentioned, get our working families in a better position from an economic mobility perspective. And folks, it's time. We're spending a lot of money on public schools, and thank goodness. It's the most important, I say it's the most important work we do in local government, but those youngest learners need us too, and we're really hopeful that we can put some additional emphasis on ways that we can make early child care work in our communities in an affordable and sustainable way. I'm going to close up because I want to make sure we have some time for questions, but I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. I know being a small business owner is not always easy for those of you who are small business owners in the room. I have a favorite coffee shop in Salem, and I've become a coffee snob as running a statewide campaign, because you find what's the independent coffee shop in town, and you know, you enjoy a nice cup of coffee, and you find out what's happening. They are community builders. And my coffee shop owner in Salem said to me, Kim, last month, every single item I buy went up. The cups, the lids, the dairy, the stirs, the coffee. He said, I can only charge so much for a cup of coffee. So we are up against it. We want to try and find a way to make sure Massachusetts works for and welcomes all. That means supporting our small businesses, whether it's technical assistance, low interest loans, ways that we can help intrepid entrepreneurs who every single day get up and in service to our communities, in service to their efforts to produce for their own family. But the vibrancy we rely on, the opportunities that happen in our communities, a lot of them are born in the places that are special to us. This is not lost on both Governor Healy and myself. We bring a lens to this work, knowing that what we do in the State House has an impact on people on the ground in 351 cities and towns across this Commonwealth. And we're working hard as we think about the opportunities we have to ensure we're bringing some equity, some affordability, and a commitment that we're going to be a state that continues to move forward. So thank you for being here today, and look forward to the Q&A section process this morning. And please know that we are with you. We are with you in the State House, trying to make sure we're making smart decisions that keeps the Commonwealth on a sure footing. Thanks so much.
I guess I've been selected to ask the first question. So, I'm a big fan of the MBTA communities law. I'm also a big fan of the City of Newton's effort to rezone. They're somewhat coincidentally happening and converging at a particular moment. And there's a little bit of a hitch in the MBTA communities law, and you probably know where I'm going with this, which says that the zoning cannot mandate commercial uses on the ground floor and have the residential units in that development count toward the threshold that the towns and cities have to meet. So, question very specific about housing: are you trying to fix that little thing in the law, and can we imagine that that's going to happen in time for our purposes?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So folks, do folks know what we're talking about here? The MBTA communities law requires anyone who has an MBTA station or service within their community, a public good, to zone for multifamily units as of right. That transit-oriented development, a little bit more density within their communities. And that's all 177 MBTA communities. And so far, 175 of the 177 have submitted their plans, and many right now are in the process of actually undertaking zoning changes to meet the new law. And Lexington was the first. The town of Lexington last month was the first town in the Commonwealth to adopt a new zoning that will allow transit-oriented development, multifamily, apartment, higher density units within a 50-acre zone within their community. And Newton and many other communities are in this process right now. And I just want to say hats off to Newton for taking this on with gusto and really connecting this zoning with opportunities to build housing and the type of housing you need. The zoning ordinance the state law does not allow communities to adopt mixed use as of right, meaning, your first floor arcade of stores or commercial activity with housing above, something that we all very much like and appreciate when it comes to building housing, myself included. We are looking at very closely, and I want to thank members of the Newton City Council who have raised it, like, hey, why can't we do this? The law doesn't seem clear. It's more built into the regulations, to see if there's a way to overcome it. I will tell you, so far the lawyers are telling me that is not possible, but I am a lawyer, so I am pushing back on them and trying to find out if there's a way that we can help here.
Any more questions?
Thanks for being here, Lieutenant Governor. I'm just curious what resources may be available from the state for the renovation and electrification of existing multifamily housing as the state pushes towards net zero. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. There are a number of programs that exist already that we are trying to buttress and make a little bit better through mass saves, programs that, frankly, right now are run more by the utilities than the state. Other states have nonprofits that run these, that provide incentives to convert to more efficient systems. We are also, as part of federal funding, looking to secure additional dollars that could work with communities, with business leaders, on how we can assist with not only the cost of those items, but also credits, mostly credits back in terms of carbon reduction, higher efficiency programs. We think there's real opportunities with existing buildings. So much of the climate crisis is certainly focused on what are we building new, how do we build it more resilient, and we need more housing and we need it to be sustainable. But much of our carbon footprint is tied to existing buildings. So we know tackling existing buildings and providing them tools to be more efficient and reduce their carbon footprint is an important component of this. And the federal funding is what we hope to work with directly with our communities. There are also opportunities for cities to apply directly for those resources. And we're trying to make sure many of the cities and towns in Massachusetts have access to that. Those dollars would then be available to existing property owners.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Hi, Colette. How are you?
Good. I wanted to ask if, with your housing priority, have you thought about perhaps giving a tax incentive to corporations who give their young employees a housing sort of break? They may give them a stipend, $2,500 to put towards, and maybe that could become an incentive to get more businesses, because we have so many young people who go through Massachusetts for college, but they don't stay here because they can't live. The cost of living is so high. So that's my question to you.
You know, we haven't looked at that one, but I will say part of having this Housing and Livable Communities Cabinet is to bring some innovation to how we think about the opportunities to develop more housing, to incentivize it. We are looking at things like infill housing when it comes to our business community. We have a lot of prior zoning that required a lot more parking, frankly, that is often needed, particularly now that folks are working remotely. Are there opportunities for micro units, for working in collaboration with some of our larger corporations that have parking lots that largely sit empty now, even more often than they may have in the past? Looking at leveraging public land. Because the cost of the dirt is so expensive, that's one of the reasons the cost of building housing is so expensive. If we have public land, can we help drive down at least some of the cost factor to make those that housing available? And that's really recycling an old idea. When veterans were returning from the war, many cities and towns gave away lots for $1, right? And so we're looking at ways that we can package some of our municipal land. We also want to support communities. Right now we have a grant opportunity out for any community that might own their own public land, a municipality, or even if it was state-owned land, working in concert to develop the feasibility of building housing on it. In my community in Salem, we're looking to build housing on our high school site. We have a high school campus. It could accommodate some micro units. That's going to be in service to paraprofessionals and custodians and folks who work in the cafeteria, all of whom we rely on and need to live in our communities too. So we want to bring some innovation to how we currently think, whether it's public higher ed, existing public land. And those are some of the innovation that we're thinking of now, and we'll certainly add this one to the list.
Thank you for taking questions. My husband and I have Johnny's and Cabot's, and I'm deeply concerned about small business. There are two significant issues that I'd like to bring to your attention. We, as a society, accept that affordable housing is an important component to healthy communities. And yet when it comes to commercial leasing, we expect small, locally owned and operated businesses that create the vibrancy, and particularly in Newton, that in the villages that we really all say we value, and yet we have to compete directly with national chains, with banks, and real estate companies that don't have the same economic equation. We have to make money off that location, and they don't. There's also a huge economic ripple effect for small business versus those other businesses. And the return of $1 spent in a local business is multiples of the impact regionally. So I want to bring up that. And the other point, to give you a glimpse of the finances of small business these days, $20,000 in water for a year at Johnny's. Electricity last June was $6,000. In July, it was $7,000. To add to that pain is credit card fees. We'd paid approximately $70,000 a year so that people can bring a plastic card in and think that the credit card companies are being so nice because they give them cash back. And that burden is on the business where you take that card to. Similarly at Cabot's, it's about $60,000 or $70,000 a year. That's huge amounts of money. And yet Massachusetts is one of the only states that does not allow businesses to charge back that percentage to customers. So I just raised those two questions. I'm deeply concerned about the next generation of small business, and we give so many benefits to large businesses when they come to the state. We vet them, we give them tax breaks, we applaud their arrival, and yet it's the small local businesses in all of our communities that deserve the same respect in terms of our finances and the importance we play in our communities.
I want to thank you for what you're doing and for what you just said. I think it's a really important value proposition, particularly our small business owners who don't always have room to charge more to their customers, who are their neighbors and their friends. And I think one of the benefits of being in a smaller community is that you know your business owners, and they're the same folks contributing to Little League and helping run events, and ways that we can help support our small business community is really important to me, and I think it's important to our administration. We are currently in the midst of what we call an economic development plan. This is something the state does every 4 years. They're required to do it under legislation. Yvonne Howe is our economic development secretary. Came from private sector, and is spearheading this effort this year. And it looks a lot different. We have industry around the table, we have small businesses around the table, and they go region by region. I'm not sure if they've been in your region yet, Ruth Ann, but I know they're coming. And I would really encourage you or a member of your team to try and be there and to share those thoughts, just because I think it's important for the folks who are putting together this plan to make sure we're hearing from everyone. Number two, one of the challenges we know we have for small businesses, particularly based on that last question, we like mixed use. We want to have some commercial activity on the first floor. The build out for the capital cost of a first floor storefront are really expensive, and that's what makes it hard for a small business owner to get in there. Often the size and the square footage, particularly in retail markets that are shifting and changing as we're seeing more online sales. How do we restructure some of the debt financing or state assistance for that vital part of that vibrancy that we love and appreciate in a downtown to help offset some of those capital costs, which might make leasing prices a little bit more manageable for new or existing small businesses as we move forward. And I'll say on the retaining small business front, we're also really mindful of the growing health insurance, concerns around costs that small business owners often have to pick up. We just talked briefly about the uninsurance pool. Like, how do we make sure that we're not overburdening more than we might be already our small business team? So it is something that's important to us, and hearing from you ways that we can be better partners and stewards of that vibrancy that we all love is really important. You're the second person to raise to me the credit card fees. I had a restaurant raise to me. Why am I paying meals tax on those credit card? I don't get to deduct the credit card fees. Yeah, thank you for that, Greg. Yeah. So it is something I'm bringing back and we're looking at. It is a big number to the Commonwealth in terms of reducing that. Once you start collecting that revenue and it comes away, there are cost implications. But we're trying to understand where can we play in the space, what would be most useful for our small business community. So thanks for raising that. And I'd really encourage you to please share that if you're able to with our economic development team. I will bring it back, but it's powerful coming from the folks who are on the ground doing it. Appreciate it. Representative. I'm sorry, there's a mic back there, but you're loud enough. I'll repeat your question.
Thank you very much for calling me out of turn here. I just want to bring up a question and sort of point out something that we would like to work with you on. That has to do with transportation, housing, and the environment. And it's something I've been focusing on for a long time, and have a team behind me, the mayor, the city council, my legislative colleagues, Jake Auchincloss from the Congress. And that is that we in Newton, we are fortunate to have public transportation, but the commuter rail system in Newton is badly in need of raising the ability to be able to get on, to raise the accessibility ability. And we have 3 commuter rail stations in Newton. The train often passes us by, and we need to have more accessibility. At the moment, some of the stations are 43 steps down to the station, and it's impossible for many people to be able to use the transportation as a result of that. We want to raise the platforms. We want to be able to get on and off quickly, and we talk about going all the way up to Springfield. We want to be able to get through Newton quickly and efficiently, and that everybody can participate in. So we need to get people off the street, out of their cars, and also we're doing a great job in terms of building housing around these commuter rail stations. So I'm just wanting to bring it to your attention and hopefully we can get on this.
Absolutely, Rep. Khan. I want to thank you for raising it, and I want you to know that your colleagues in local and federal government have also raised that as well. I've had an opportunity to tour one of the commuter rail stops with the mayor, and it's something that's high on our list to try and figure out. You're doing your part on housing. How do we do our part on transportation? Well heard and appreciated. Thank you. And I want to just also say, it is all braided together. Housing, transportation, climate, that's the way we see it as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Hello, Amy. How are you?
I am great. You are our hero. You've been our hero for a long time. Congratulations on the Secretariat and choosing someone who understands municipal government. Brilliant, because that's where the action is. And of course, you had a big role in creating Housing Choice. So thank you, thank you, thank you. My question is, how can we be partners to the administration who is doing so many wonderful things, particularly around the issue of older adults? The percentage rent burden is higher for older adults, and they're the ones who created this community that we've built. And yet all the housing programs don't really work, but if they did, they could actually save the Commonwealth money by keeping people out of nursing homes as we do. I know you believe that. I know Secretary Walsh believes that. So how can we be your partners in making all affordable housing for older adults supportive housing and increasing the supply massively for everybody's benefit.
Just before you close up, does everybody know who Amy is and what Amy does? Give them the elevator pitch really quickly.
Two Life Communities believes every older adult deserves the opportunity to live a full life of connection and purpose and dynamic supportive environment. We do it with a laser sharp focus on affordability. We keep people for their whole lives. They don't go to nursing homes. They stay with us and live in the way they deserve to live.
The question isn't how can you partner with me? The question is how can I partner with you? We're lucky to have your organization and others that are in this space of aging in place with dignity and respect. And we've had the pleasure of having some conversations about how do we support an age-friendly state, a place where people can age in place with dignity. And as you have often said, no one says, I can't wait to go to a nursing home when I get older. And frankly, we don't have the nursing home rooms and beds to support our aging population. We've yet to hit the apex of baby boomers. This is an issue we're deeply concerned about, and part of our housing conversation involves supportive housing. The state, and I should give credit to Massachusetts for the amount of resources we do develop and support housing needs, both for affordable members of our community, our most vulnerable populations, and also experimental housing and supportive housing. That's housing that has wraparound services that could support older adults who need a little bit more care, but can live independently with that. Nobody does it better than Amy and her team, and we want to find ways to expand that. How can we help? I really do think we want to make sure that every community in Massachusetts is age-friendly. Right now, if you think about the elder care system, it's less of a system and much more of a patchwork. Depending upon where you live and what your insurance is and your knowledge base is how anyone who's taking care of an older adult might know what I'm referring to. And we have some opportunities in Massachusetts with through Medicare and Medicaid that is looking for experimental ways that we can reduce the cost of health care if we can keep people healthier in their homes. And frankly, out of the pandemic came, mobilized health opportunities. So how do we think about delivering health care in a mobilized environment? How do we think about housing as health care if we can keep people in their house safely and not have them in an environment that frankly they don't want to be in, is probably more costly and less of a quality of life. So those are the experimental innovations that we're hoping to bring to bear with you and others. And I think ways that folks in this space can help us, particularly the business community, is being open to these concepts around housing and showing up when it comes to whether it's the zoning changes or support in your community for ways that housing innovation can happen. Usually in communities, when you're building new development, frankly, of any type, there's a whole lot of people who come up and say no. No because of the traffic, no because of the parking, no because it changes the character of the neighborhood, no because it's too tall, too wide, too something. And look, some of that may be accurate, but we need to go from saying no to yeah, but how do we make it fit? Yeah, but how do we address the traffic? Yeah, but how do we realize the trade-offs? It might take me 5 or 10 more minutes to get home, but there's going to be a roof over somebody's head. That's a really important value. Okay, Greg's calling it out. One more question.
Hi. Thank you for your time this morning. My wife and I own Visiting Angels. We partner with many of the facilities in our communities to support seniors who want to either live at home or in a facility. One of the question I wanted to ask you is that what are you and the governor doing to address some of the other workforce issues? We see, unfortunately, some of our employees decide to leave the workforce voluntarily, and yet they still apply for unemployment and are given the benefit of unemployment benefits. It's very frustrating for, I'm sure, many small businesses who have the same experience. And we know that during COVID, there was a lot of abuse and fraud of the unemployment system, and that's a separate issue. But in terms of trying to get people that are able to work back into the workforce, as opposed to creating incentives for them to remain out of the workforce, is really critical to small businesses like ours.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, a lot of these programs are designed to be safety nets, not programs and initiatives for folks who are leaving of their own volition. I want to talk a little bit about immigration. So thank you for that question on unemployment insurance. I think there's always ways we can improve that system. We're going to continue to do that. And certainly, this is a new administration who can look at new approaches to ensuring that folks who can work are working, and we can develop workforce training programs for individuals in a lot of different ways. I do want to say a word about immigration, because we have a bit of a surge happening with people coming into Massachusetts from other parts of the country, not just here, but in lots of places. And there is a failed federal immigration system when it comes to folks who want to work. We are a right to shelter state, which means we are legally required, and I think it's part of our value system, to shelter families. We don't want to have homeless families living in tents out in our communities. And so we are right now have almost 6,000 families in shelter in 66 different communities across Massachusetts. A whole lot of them are from Massachusetts, are natives here who are struggling with the high cost of housing that we spent some time talking about today. But many of them are newer immigrants into our community. We have 125 families at Salem State in my own community who are utilizing an unused dorm at Salem State. And I visited the dorm prior to being sworn in. And there was a number of folks from Haiti and Venezuela and Brazil and the North Shore there. And every single one of our new immigrant families said to me, work, job, I want to work, I want a job. And many of them are prohibited from doing that because of archaic immigration laws. We are a state that recently passed a bill and supported it at the ballot to allow undocumented individuals to obtain a driver's license. Those same individuals are not permitted to work in Massachusetts, yet you know they are. So we are really focused on trying to find a work pathway through this state that would enable people to get to work. And many of those folks are going to be personal care assistants and in the field that you happen to work in. So our goal as a state, if the federal government and if the Supreme Court wants to push down all kinds of new policies to the state level, from reproductive freedom to gun rights, well, we will take immigration on, and we will put ourselves in a position to have a whole lot of folks that we rely on in a state that has a 400-year history of welcoming immigrants. Those who want to work should have a pathway to do that, whether you're a young adult trying to figure out your way in life or a new immigrant to our community. And we're focused on trying to do that. We think that can also help with some of our workforce shortages. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you so much for the work you're doing. Please think of us as partners. We're here for you. We want this Commonwealth to work for and welcome all. We're committed to the work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor, for being here, sharing those thoughts. You can hear the kinds of things that are on people's minds, and we appreciate that you're a partner willing to work with us all collectively and very much. And please do let the governor know that you had ice cream this morning, that she missed that. And thanks to all of you for being part of this chamber, for belonging to this chamber, being part of this community. Have a great morning, everybody.